Okay, so I just tweeted a link if anybody would like to follow along with my talk. It's just a text file that you can access, and then you can put it in your own processor and increase the font however you want. But I also have paper handouts of my talk. I have like a 12-point font and then an 18-point font if anybody would like one of these. Would anybody want one? No, yes? Okay, there are a few people. So here, I'll just pass these around and you can take one. There aren't many. Thank you. So before I officially begin with my talk, I just want to mention that it has shifted a little bit since my initial proposal. I was originally going to talk about object-oriented rhetoric to make the case that computer algorithms were persuasive. And then in writing this paper, I decided to take a different line of thinking. So we'll see how this flies. But where's Doug Iman? Is he somewhere? So his talk this morning actually sets this up really well when he was talking about algorithms and we can't forget the human. So I think there's a really good cross connection with that. So the title of my talk today, and I have no slides, is Who Are the Real Digital Rhetoricians? Defining Persuasive Computer Algorithms. The impulse to connect digitally has refigured how people share information and access content online. The internet, apps, and smart technologies mediate daily life in high technology cultures. With a few flicks on the keyboard, touches on a screen, or vocalizations, people assume lives full of imagination and play, mentioned by Judy Washman as evoking dreams and desires about the future. Yet over time, as commercial and governmental interests have populated digital spaces, there is a sense that someone or something watches us online. Nowadays, personalization offered by large Silicon Valley companies seemingly persuades people to think or act in specific ways. Underneath the screen, computer code plays a significant role in what people experience online. The ways people interact through social media, email, video, audio, and even discussion boards embraces a knowledge economy where code is currency. At the same time, computer algorithms, that is, rule-based procedures for giving solutions to problems, are conductors helping orchestrate interface exchanges. There's a strong sense in the news media and scholarly conversations in critical media studies, political science, and sociology that algorithms choreograph more than just connections among people. For some, algorithms provide industry and business leaders a bird's eye view of what people are doing online because of big data. For others, algorithms are shaping people's actions and behaviors. Now, it is true that this view adopts technological determinism, a now out of vogue stance in scholarly circles. But despite this latter perspective, I tend to adopt a soft determinist stance in relation to computer algorithms. Undeniably, the language objects facilitate and mediate the flow of information online, but they do so with varying degrees of functionality. Some computer algorithms operate to sort data, like the sort feature in a spreadsheet, and other algorithms exist to speed up the processing of data. Regardless of the algorithm's functionality, they do make things happen and affect changes within machine processes and human behaviors. I also tend to think of these language objects as quasi-rhetorical agents with persuasive abilities, which contributes to conversations about non-human and digital rhetorics. Although the traditional ways of thinking about computer algorithms do not usually include discussions of persuasion, I nevertheless maintain that algorithms are persuasive because of their performative nature and the values and beliefs that are embedded within the algorithm. And sometimes I tend to think that persuasive computer algorithms are the real digital rhetoricians. In a narrow sense, they are the digital representative orators delivering information to millions of people, setting the stage for real human change. Algorithms in a rhetorical sense are invented, arranged, styled, memorized in multiple senses, and delivered. But does it necessarily follow then that these non-human language objects that influence real change in stock markets, financial data, dating sites, and social media spaces are persuasive in and of themselves? Do computer algorithms persuade? Thanks to discussions in critical media studies, there is an informed, albeit theorized, discussion about the performativity of computer algorithms that partially answers this question. In her 2005 book, My Mother Was a Computer, Catherine Hales asserts code's performativity because it makes things happen. She argues that computer code stands in relation to natural languages. After all, code executes and performs encoded instructions, as Alexander Galloway has elsewhere noted. The framework for performativity also connects to Derrida's work, Signature Event Context, and Judith Butler's work on this very topic. Both Derrida and Butler argue for a connection between language and force, with force being an energy layer that communication transmits upon, within, or alongside. Language, as Derrida and Butler may have it, becomes coded, associated, attached with the repetition and ritual of a force or action. Language is intimately connected with force once live in spatial and temporal dimensions. I think theoretically people cannot separate the two because language cannot exist without a dimension, even if such a dimension is ephemeral. Such theoretical ground also calls to mind Thomas Rickard's discussions on Cora, and examining the works of Kristeva, Derrida, and Almer. He notes that Cora transforms our senses of beginning, creation, and invention by placing them concretely within material environments, informational spaces, and affective or bodily registers. While Rickard notes this conversation gives rise to rhetorical invention, for Derrida, rhetoric's place in invention also briefly calls attention to the spatial and temporal dimensions with which discourse resides. And so these conversations taken together, I think, provide an imaginative inquiry into the locative and performative dimensions of computer algorithms from a rhetorical lens. Algorithms bounded in computer code and nestled inside the soft and hardware of machines act. When data inputs into the algorithm, a transactional invention occurs, where for a moment the spatial, temporal, and lingual dimensions of the data, the algorithm, and circuits, in a sense, become alive or live, thus performing ritualized and routine acts for the processing and exchange of information. And then, of course, the reciprocal and reflexive nature of algorithms and transactional inventions highlights the relationships in the network of actants, drawing upon Latour. The non-human actant computer algorithms performs within this interaction or dance of inputs and outputs of data. In some sense, Latour's idea of delegation to non-humans, I think, is really important here, wherein objects define how people or other objects move or respond. And this begins to really hint at this type of agency. If language becomes encoded and attached to a spatial and temporal dimension, and computer algorithms are encoded as active procedures after the input of data, then does it necessarily follow that persuasion takes place? In 2011, interdisciplinary theorist Lucas Introna, who routinely publishes on the ethics of technology and surveillance, argued that the performativity of computer code should really be understood in terms of the encoding process from the agent through the transmission to the receiver. And as such, encoded language objects are really extensions of agency. So the process of encoding, according to Introna, translates agency or becoming from one event to another, thereby extending agency, becoming of actors beyond the boundaries of the singular local event. In the example of the creation and development of algorithms, this encoding also carries forward the intentions and designs of the mathematicians and programmers who develop such equations. When the algorithms execute through code, the past agency and designs of the creators carry forward in the transactional invention, giving way to a transformative iteration of an old context into a new understanding. So if we consider what Introna calls encoded agency, then the question of how persuasion operates or functions, if at all, inevitably arises. And so I think here, looking at the three classical appeals, ethos, logos, and pathos, provides an interesting case for a theoretical treatment of algorithmic persuasion. So if the mathematician or programmer's agency is encoded and extended into their language creations, which include algorithms and then code and programming languages, then I think we can also ask what else is encoded in those acts. In techno-feminism, sociologist Judy Washburn described how the encoding of gender occurred in technological products. So one example she uses is the development and marketing of the microwave. So it was first developed and marketed to single men as a brown technology for quick meals. And it was placed alongside high-tech goods in department stores. But then as single men rejected this technology, the marketers repackaged and rebranded it as a white technology, and then they placed it alongside washing machines and other home appliances. So the gender encoding of this non-human object brings to mind the transmission of values and beliefs. As Washburn noted, marketing and retailing play a key role in framing demand. There is an unclear dividing line between accurately representing the customer, constructing the customer, and controlling the customer. The process of encoding is also further reflected in the work of Tara McPherson in her chapter, Why Are the Digital Humanities So White? Or Thinking the Histories of Race and Computation in Debates in the Digital Humanities. And so in her work, she really illustrates the relationship of the role of modularity used in Unix. So that's discrete code that can be chunked and interchanged in clean interfaces, and the social and political segregation of race in the United States. And she called attention to how the organization of information and capital in the 1960s powerfully responds across many registers to the struggles for racial justice and democracy that so categorized the United States at this time. So from this view, Unix programmers were historically, socially, and politically situated in this powerfully race and class political landscape, much of which is subsumed, albeit unconsciously, in the encoding of Unix within this program. And so I think these two examples help illustrate both conscious and unconscious encoding of social, cultural, and political ideologies and non-human objects. Whether it is gender or race, ableism, class, or what I'll discuss shortly, Western values of organization and logic, the suasive appeal of pathos comes part of the development of algorithms and later code. In this sense, an algorithm can represent and construct the people who interact with such language objects. And here I'm thinking about Amazon's recommendation feature or Netflix recommendation feature, or even the personalized advertisements that people might see in Facebook. Thinking of another rhetorical appeal, ethos, the original paper written by Sergey Brin and Larry Page, authored in 1998 while they were at Stanford on Google's PageRank algorithm, provides a sense of how credibility operates in association with computer algorithms. And their argument positioned the World Wide Web as an unorganized hyperlinked frontier, prime for digital architecture and orders to help inexperienced users retrieve relevant web pages faster through search engine results. And to position their algorithm that started Google, Brin and Page associated PageRank with the quality control of academic citation analysis because of the accuracy of representation in such systems. Now, there's a part of me that, like, when you read this article, I have to think that they were highly influenced by being in an academic environment to construct this argument to begin with. But by making this connection, this ideologically positioned PageRank as this almost like objective measure or way of assessment for search, browsing, and traffic estimation. And if you read through their entire paper, it really leaves little doubt about how Brin and Page positioned PageRank as an ethos-bearing method for organizing information on the web because of this peer review function of evaluating backlinks on web pages. And as for the rhetorical appeal of logos, when programmers talk about algorithms as discrete and objective and largely neutral objects, such discussions come from a Western cultural premise that these symbols are scientifically credible and logical procedures. The reasoning within this premise lies a notion that exalts the algorithm as detached and unbiased. So many of the traditional definitions of computer algorithms are really described in scientific terms. For example, in his multi-volume work, The Art of Computer Programming, Donald Knuth described algorithms with 5 features. Finiteness, or how an algorithm terminates after a certain number of sequences; definiteness, or the precise definitions an algorithm needs to carry out its functions; input and output; and then effectiveness, or the most efficient and way for a basic method of performance. And then computer scientist Robert Sedgwick, who surveyed computer algorithms in his book aptly titled Algorithms, defined them as elements used in computer science to describe a problem-solving method suitable for implementation as computer programs. Sedgwick, who completed his doctoral work under the training of Knuth and is a faculty member at Princeton University and a member of the board at Adobe Systems, further describes algorithms in terms of their performance and their running times. And in these 2 terms, I think we might be able to describe, or this is how we start to see where computer scientists really think about algorithms in terms of their neutrality because of this way of logic and thinking. And, you know, okay, so granted, sure, in computer science and mathematics, knowing the run times and hardware properties provides a structure for analyzing and estimating how programs will crunch data. And the structure does require computational and procedural schemata for recognizing the benefits and constraints of implementing such programs. However, I also contend that even though that computer scientists see it from this logical base, there are also other values and beliefs embedded within these structures. So in answering the question, do computer algorithms persuade, I err on the side of claiming that they do, because of the transfer of agency through encoding, the transactional invention that takes place through data input and output, the embedded cultural, political, and social beliefs about race, class, gender, and sex, and other protected and unprotected classes, the logic structures that come from Western values of organization and order. And then what's left out of this talk is the effects algorithms really have upon humans and non-humans in everyday lives and machine behaviors. So for one reason that I cast this argument, or really kind of like the big so what, rests with the formation and sustained scholarship in critical code studies. Some of the scholarship in this field analyzes code using hermeneutics, which casts code in some ways, I think, as a static object for examination. While it's not my position in closing to provide a critique of the use of hermeneutics with code, I'm really beginning to appreciate how such an application separates the action or the performance of code in its environment and places code elsewhere in word processors for scholarship or poetry or play. Now, certainly there is value and merit in such scholarly models. However, if our colleagues from literature and critical theory use the training and tools developed from their home disciplines in the field of critical code studies, then why not have digital rhetoricians use their social scientific and humanities-based theories and methodologies to study, theorize, and play with both algorithms and code? Now, of course, there are people in our field who do this, many in this room. For example, I had a talk with Kevin Brock last night who said, yes, this is something I talk about. Let's create rhetorical code studies. And that seems like an interesting adventure to me for those of us here to consider and to take up in future work. I think our field is primed to consider the embedded social and cultural values in algorithms, how they operate and how they affect change in machine and human behaviors, and focusing our scholarly attention towards rhetorical and theoretical treatments of computer algorithms opens interdisciplinary conversations and relationships, attracts complementary and divergent views, and gives us a path towards greater knowledge about the formation, creation, and use of computer algorithms in myriad spaces. Thank you.